So welcome to the C++ compilation process. In this video, we're going to set the stage for the next video where we talk about forward declaration. And during the video, I'm going to be building up this diagram for you to help you understand how compilation works in C++. So let's dive in and take a look at it step by step. So before I even start this video, I want to thank Daniel Marshall for pointing out the shortcomings in the next video, actually, which is the one about forward declarations. I have now come to retrospectively insert this video rather, because it's going to help make things clearer as to how compilation works. So thanks, Daniel. Here we go. How does compilation work in Unreal? It's about time we knew. So when you have a header file and you hash include it into a CPP file, then the preprocessors, now I say preprocessors because in Unreal there's various things going on before compilation. One is that header files get included into CPP files. One is that the Unreal header tool has an involvement. The other is that macros have an involvement. Things like UElog get expanded out to different C++ code. All of that we're just going to, for the moment, lump together into the concept of pre-processing. But you remember from section 1 that .h files literally get cut and paste into the top of a CPP file at the preprocessor stage. All right, so just remember that for now. So if we hash include tank.h into the controller C++ file, then at the top of the controller C++ just before compilation, you'll have all of the text of the controller.h and all of the text of the tank.h, but none of the tank's actual code, none of the tank's CPP code. So at this stage, the compiler can turn this new CPP file that we never get to see, but is a combination of, as I say, of those two header files plus some macros that have been expanded, plus possibly some other stuff that the Unreal header tool has put in. And that gets compiled into a controller.obj file, an object file. Now you can find these object files, by the way, in your project directory under Intermediate, Build, Win64, UE4 Editor, Development, Battletank, and you'll find it in a similar place on a Mac. And you have these .obj files. So there's the tank object, and there's the tank AI controller object. They're the ones we're talking about. I'm calling it controller just because I want to group together the player controller and the AI controller conceptually, just to keep this diagram simple. Okay, so they're the object files. Now they can't be run directly, but they are there. So let's continue the story. In a very similar way, the tank.h gets pasted into the top of the CPP, possibly including some other class, let's say tankbarrel.h. That new CPP file with all its nuances and changes gets compiled into an object file, tank.obj, there it is, right here. And then what happens is something called linking. Well, actually, this happens after all the classes have been compiled, but let me just tell you a bit early for the sake of argument. So what this means is the controller object is expecting to be able to make some injections directly into the tank object because it knows about the types of all of the public members of the tank, the variables and the methods. All right, so it's expecting that to be conforming to some sort of contract. But once all the linkings happen for all the classes, that includes now on the right-hand side the barrel, then you've actually got a workable exe file. The reason, by the way, you get linker errors some of the time is if, for example, you use a tank.h and you declare a class and then you import it into the controller and talk about a tank, then it will get this file, it'll compile, but it won't link if you don't implement the tank properly. Because what will happen is it'll go, I'm trying to find a hook into the tank here and I can't find it. So when you get linker errors, it's normally a discrepancy between your header file and your CPP file. Check your definitions with linker errors and make sure you have the same signature between your header file and your C++. That's the typical cause of the problem there. So I don't want you to change any code right now. I just want to show you something, and then I've got a step-by-step process for you to show you how I want you to explore for yourself. And by the end of the video, we won't have changed any code. We're going to put it all back to how it is now because this video has been retrospectively inserted into the course and I don't want to change the state of the next couple of videos. All right, so here we go. I just want to show you a couple of things. Here's the tank player controller. We currently hash include the header file. Okay, we don't want to do that. I'll show you back on the diagram. What we don't want to do is this, hash include header files in header files like this. Because if you do it once, the tank into the controller, then you may want to do it again, the barrel into the tank. And that means that all of the barrel's code and all of the tank's code is included in the controller, which is in turn pasted in the top of the C++ of the controller, which slows down compilation and also confuses things. You get these weird strings of dependencies. So we don't want to do it like that. We want to do it like this, header files into C++ files only, unless the only time you need to do a header file into a header file is when you're actually inheriting. So a tank player controller is a player controller, inherits right there So therefore we do need to include the tank player controller there because it's inheriting. But the rest of the time, in general, you wouldn't do a hash include like I've already done here in a header file. So if we took it out of a header file and we stick it in the player controller file, say here, above the tank player controller, it will actually build right now. And the reason is because when the pre-processing happens, it's putting the tank header file content above the tank player controller content, which means that when we get to this bit here where it says a tank in the header controller, it already knows what a tank is. Now I'll go into this in a bit more detail in the next video, but the problem with this is that if you were to put the tank somewhere else, which is below the player controller, it now won't compile. Let me just show you it not compiling. Okay, and that's because when it gets to the bit in the tank player controller that says a tank here, it doesn't know anything about the tank yet. Now we don't want these type of dependencies. The only dependencies we want in our hash includes in terms of the order we write them is this horrible unreal thing that the generator.h has to go last. All right, but we got no control over that. We do have control over what we do here. So what I'm going to be showing you in the next video is actually what to do so that this hash include can still stay in the CPP file, but it can stay in here anywhere. And for now, I'm just going to put my code back exactly where it was. So I'll leave things exactly where they were. In fact, I'll use version control to do that. I'll close down my file, and there are no changes made now to my code whatsoever in this video. So what I want you to do now as a challenge is to go ahead and try it for yourself. It'll make a lot more sense. Open your tank player controller.h, move the hash include tank.h to the C++ file. Try it both above and below the tank player controller import and see what works and what doesn't for yourself. And then when you finish, put your code back to the original state. And that's it. I'm just going to leave you to do that. And I'm going to leave on the screen this slide here because it explains how the compilation works and how we want to do our include. So have a good think about this. Have a quick play with it. See if it makes sense to you. Maybe go and share with us on Facebook or wherever you wish about your thoughts and confusions and clarity over this. And I will see you in the next video.